and welcome to this update video from Dazatron's Diorama Llama. So I'm creating this video for a few reasons really. One is just to say hello because it's been a while. It's actually the beginning of April when I last uploaded a video onto the channel, and I like to produce one at least, one every month if I can. And yeah, just to tell you kind of where I'm at, and also to give you a collection update. So in this video I'm going to show you a few of the bits that I've purchased over the past 6 months, as we're coming to the end of June, halfway through the year. So it seems like a good opportunity to kind of, just show you a few bits that I've purchased. So firstly, just I suppose an update of why I've been away for I suppose coming up to 3 months really. And if I'm being absolutely honest, I suppose I haven't been in a great place in terms of my mental health. And I've struggled with my mental health in particular for the past 2 years actually. And I think that was one of the reasons why I started this channel, was to kind of give me a bit of an outlet, something to kind of focus my time on when I'm not at work. So I teach in a secondary school, and that can be quite stressful in itself. Don't get me wrong, it's enjoyable too, but just the nature of the job can be quite a stressful one. But there's actually been lots of other things in the background, other things that I hadn't really dealt with, if I'm being honest, from my childhood, that kind of came out, I suppose, a couple of years ago, kind of came to the surface, and it was something I needed to deal with. Ended up seeing a counsellor for a little while, and I got some good support around me, and a massive thank you to my family and even my workplace and friends who knew what I was going through, because that was really helpful. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that, because I don't think this is the place really, or the time at the moment anyway, to kind of talk about that, but just to kind of be really honest about that situation, and to just be vocal about the fact that we do struggle with mental health. And it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, particularly in education. There's a lot of talk about mental health because there's been a lot of research into mental health, so we're a lot more aware of I suppose different causes, different kind of, I suppose, types of mental health that we used to be. There's kind of a lot of, I suppose, I don't know if myths is the right word, but kind of we didn't always see it in the way that we should have done. It had a bit of a stigma attached to it, and I think it still does, particularly with men. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm just being honest about this situation now really, is just to encourage anybody else who is going through a tough time, not to brush it off, because I think that's part of the issue sometimes. I think is that as men we kind of think, oh, it's nothing, we're okay, we're just having a low day or a bad period, or we're just going through this particular crisis, and we'll get through it. And actually often people do get through those little blips, but if we don't really stop to think about what might be the cause of those issues, or how we can maybe deal better when we meet that next blip, it could go horribly wrong. And hopefully that wouldn't be the case for anybody who's watching this video. I certainly hope not, but I know that can happen, and we can get ourselves into a really low place, and that's much more difficult to pull yourself out of when you get there. And in some ways I kind of got to a dark place myself, because I'd left it and brushed it under the carpet, and you get to a point where you have to deal with it. And so I just encourage you really, if you're watching this and you wasn't expecting a mental health talk from Dazatron's Diorama Llama, then maybe it would just kind of give you that impetus to maybe yeah, seek help or speak to somebody if you're struggling yourself, because it's really important to talk about it. And again, I'm not going to go into all the issues around my own mental health, but just to say, be kind to yourself, and if you need to take a bit of time out, then do so. I know we don't always have the luxury of that with certain things, particularly like work and things like that, but where you can, stop something or do something else or find something that gives you some joy or even just a distraction. I'd encourage you to do that, because it's really, really important. So even though, yeah, as I said, I kind of started this channel in some ways, I suppose, to help with some of my mental health issues, that wasn't the sole reason, but it's certainly one of them. And I have to say, it's definitely been a help. And actually collecting toys, maybe that's my midlife crisis. I am the age 46, in fact coming up to 47 pretty soon, which is scary in itself. And so maybe, yeah, my kind of midlife crisis is collecting toys. I suppose we end up buying something if we're fortunate to be able to do that. And I know, there's many people who aren't fortunate to be able to spend money on things like this, or cars, or whatever it is that you kind of end up purchasing at these times. But yeah, it's definitely been a help again, but it's not a cure, is it? And I think that's the thing. Any of this stuff, sometimes it is just a distraction, and we have to be careful that it's not just another way of covering up the issues that we're dealing with. And so it is really important to deal with those issues, and then hopefully these other things will be a positive outlet, and something that's actually going to be meaningful and not actually add to the kind of the pressure. And I suppose that's the thing with the dioramas, is that they take a bit of time. I don't always have a lot of downtime when I come back, or I'm just not in a position to, or don't have the energy, should I say, to actually work on something like that. So so that's why they haven't been coming out as quickly as I would have liked. But I think it's just helpful for me to be honest with you about that. And I have mentioned it before in a video called The Creative Itch on my channel, that frustration of wanting to do something creative and then you can't always, or you can't think of something. And I think at the end of the day, if it becomes pressured for you, or if it's creating more stress, or if it's adding to, I suppose, kind of mental health issues, you need to stop. And so I needed just to kind of, I think, take a little break from the channel. Certainly when it comes to the diorama stuff like what I'm doing today is much easier. It's me just kind of showcasing a few bits that I've picked up, and hopefully you might see a figure that you haven't seen before, or a line that you might think, oh yeah, I'll have a look into that myself. So that's the purpose of this. I've said before, I'm not a reviewer. That's kind of not really what this channel is about. Although you would have seen, I do like to do a toy spotlight now and again, and kind of do a bit of a focus on a toy line, particularly if it's a line that doesn't get much love or appreciation or attention on YouTube. I like to draw attention to that, and in fact there's a couple of figures that I'm not showing today, and because of that reason I want to do a kind of special video on those, because again, it's a toy line that many people don't know about. I've only just discovered it again, but I'm not going to give too much away on that, because again, eventually I'll get round to creating that video. I have actually got another diorama video that I've already filmed. I just need to edit it, but again, I just haven't been able to get into the right mindset to even just to that. So anyway, I hope me just being honest and open about where I'm at and why there's been a bit of a pause in the channel would encourage you to just be honest with yourselves, and I hope actually you're not going through any mental health issues at the moment. But if you are, definitely talk about it. And if you are actually a Transformers fan, particularly, well, actually you don't have to be in the UK because it's a Facebook group, but there is a Facebook group on the Transformers UK, TFUK, and I'm trying to remember, I think it's Open Door or something like that is the mental health group. But if you look for TFUK and ask on there, I'm sure they'll be able to kind of put you forward to the group kind of chat. And it's just there really, again, to support people who are struggling with the mental health, who like Transformers in particular. But I'm sure if it's any kind of collecting, I'm sure they would welcome you into the group. But I'd encourage you, if you want somewhere to talk with people who've been there, then that's definitely a site worth checking out on Facebook. And I'm sure there's other places too, but definitely, definitely speak to somebody. So let's have a look then at what I've picked up over the past 6 months. I'm just going to kind of pull my camera back a little bit. It always amazes me when you kind of put these kind of figures together that you've collected in actually not that long a period of time, really, half a year. It's always surprising how much you've picked up, and I think this is probably quite a small collection compared to some other people's. I know certainly in the past couple of years there's been kind of times I've picked up lots and lots and lots of stuff, and times I haven't picked up much at all. And actually thought I was slowing down this year, certainly with Transformers anyway. I haven't picked up that many Transformers this year, and that's mainly because, you know, I've got nothing against Hasbro, but the Legacy line, which is their new line, isn't really doing it for me. But occasionally there's a toy that kind of grabs my attention. I still like the Studio Series line. In fact, one of the last ones I've picked up was this one here, which is Scourge from the new Rise of the Beasts movie. This is his alt mode, which I think is fantastic. There's so much detail in this for essentially what is a children's toy. I mean, I guess in some ways the Studio Series line is aimed at collectors, but you know, it's still much cheaper than many toy lines. I know the prices for Hasbro have gone up, but on the whole it's not too bad a price point, and it's a really good figure. I'm not going to transform it today, but if you haven't seen Rise of the Beasts, and whether you're a fan of Transformers or not, I'd encourage you to go and see it. I really enjoyed the Bumblebee film. I wasn't a big fan of the Michael Bay movies. I enjoyed the first one. I've watched all of them. They've all entertained me in some way. I know many people hated the Dinobots when they appeared, but I actually thought they were quite a cool update. That's one of the other figures I've got actually up in the loft. Is the Grimlock they did, and I really thought that was a cool design. Nothing like the original at all, but a really cool design nonetheless. But Rise of the Beasts, I think, would be probably my second of the my favourites of the live action run anyway. Transformers the movie, the cartoon, the animated version from 1986, that's still my favourite Transformers movie. Everything about that film I love. The animation, the characters, the music, the soundtrack. It's just a fantastic film, and if you've never seen it, you must watch it. I think it's fantastic. But yeah, if you haven't seen Transformers Rise of the Beasts, I'd encourage you to go and see it. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you will too. So the only other Transformer I picked up was actually at Transformers UK Con. So the Facebook group I was just talking to you about, and they have a convention every year. This was the second year, and it's just a small group of people. It's not a really large convention. I can't remember how many were there this year. but it's got a really laid back feel. Some great guests who you actually get time to chat to. I know when I've been to conventions in the past, you know, you see a guest and, you know, very quickly you got to get something signed and then move on. But at this convention, you actually get to talk to the guests throughout the day, which is amazing, and get to hang out with them and have a drink with them, and that's just brilliant. So again, particularly if you like Transformers and you're in the UK, the tickets for the next Transformers convention, TF UK Con 2024, are on sale now on the Facebook group. I'd encourage you to take a look because they're a fantastic bunch of people. So what I picked up there from Prime Time Toys was this guy here. I always wanted an Omega Supreme. I don't know if it's pronounced Amiga or Omega, but this guy appeared on all of the, well, on lots of the packaging to the Transformers I picked up as a child. There was a big kind of battle scene on the back, and often you would see this guy in battle, and he was huge in the illustration. And I just remember as a kid going, wow, how awesome it would be to kind of find this guy. And I never saw it at the time. Since kind of getting back into collecting, I've seen, obviously there was a vintage toy, which is quite different to this in many ways. But this is kind of a legend scale one, so those who've been following my channel for a while know that I pick up the smaller scale Transformers, and I know he doesn't look very small scale, but believe me, he is compared to the full size one, and he's just wonderful. So this is by Pangu Toys, and there's a few versions coming out. It's a third-party company, and these are, obviously it's not an official license, but with Transformers, third-party companies do some incredible toys, sometimes better than the main line, sometimes not, sometimes a bit fiddly, or the engineering's not so good, or they're prone to break. So you've got to kind of do your research and find out the ones you like. But this guy in particular is fantastic. Really good articulation, great transformation, lots of kind of little accessories and stuff like that. So he was a top pickup this year, if I can get him to stand up. There we go. So that's pretty much the main Transformers I've picked up, apart from some Predacons, which I'll show in another video once I've got them all. So what else have I got? So you can see on here there's a few vintage bits, there's a few modern bits. Yeah, let's have a look over here. So this is Killer Croc, and this is by a toy designer artist called James Groman. I think I've got that right. Do look him up on Instagram. Often does kind of special, kind of limited run toys, which usually are quite expensive. He's recently done a collaboration, I think, with Nickelodeon, and created a sculpt for Reptar from Rugrats, which the detail on it is incredible. Still looks like the, you know, the kind of Reptar kind of cartoon that you'd expect, but he's got all of the kind of the skin detail, a bit like what you can see on Killer Croc here. But this was part of DC Direct from a number of years ago. Not quite a vintage toy yet, so you can still pick this up on eBay for some decent prices. And this is his version of Killer Croc, and the amount of detail on these is incredible. And I picked this up. This was gosh, I'm trying to remember how much it was. I think it was less than £50. I think it's between £30 and £40, if I remember right. And because they produce quite a few of these, I suppose they can bring the cost down. But you get to own a James Groman sculpt. And he actually did 4 figures in this line. So you got this one here, which is Killer Croc, which is my favourite. And then you've got his version of Two-Face, which is just insane. Love the detail and the paintwork on this. Of course, these aren't articulated. These are kind of sculptures, just made out of plastic. But they are stunning, and there's just so much attention to detail throughout. He also did a version of the Joker and of Batman. His version of the Joker wasn't quite so keen on. I do like the Batman, which I might pick up at some point. But for the moment, I'm sticking with those two. So if you've never heard of James Groman, he's actually, I'm sure he was the designer for some of the original Mad Balls from the 80s line. And he's worked on lots and lots of toys since then, but he's still designing and making toys and doing these kind of special runs. He's definitely worth looking out for, particularly if you like that kind of highly kind of detailed look, which I think they're great. So yeah, so let's move on to this guy. So is it Usagi Yojimbo? Is that, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But that is, he did make an appearance in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's become a bit of a regular with that toy line. This is, and I can't think of his name, it's Stan somebody. His name's gone right out of my head. But there was a comic book run of this, and I don't think the original title, comic book title, had anything to do with Turtles, if I remember right. That was like a collaboration, and that kind of came later. But he's just this samurai rabbit, and he's just fantastic. There was a colour version, but it was this kind of comic book black and white version that I particularly liked. He's even got his little dinosaur there, which is fantastic. Lots of little weapons that you can remove. He's got his little kind of, I suppose, straw or kind of wicker hat there. Again, lots of articulation on this guy, and he's just a really fantastic figure. There is some special signed editions of this as well, which is really expensive. And even this guy is quite hard to pick up now. This is just kind of the normal black and white version, but I just love it. It's got so much character, and comes with another head as well. So yeah, he was a recent pickup by NECA, or NECA again, however you pronounce that company. But yeah, really good figure. So that was a great one. Let's have a look. Who should I go to next? So we've got some more vintage toys. So I recently started looking at the Mighty Max figures, or play sets, should I call them. So we had this was kind of a little bit after Polly Pocket. So I don't know if you remember the Polly Pocket toys. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. It's a little bit tricky, as I'm holding. Give me a moment. Let's see if I can get that undone. So these were, they come a little bit after Polly Pocket, and it was trying to get the boys interested really into this kind of type of toy, this kind of play set. And so they came up with this Mighty Max line. So they're all kind of, you know, quite gruesome, like, you know, aliens, dinosaurs, creatures, you know, monsters. And here we go. So this is the this is one of the mini sets, and they are just incredible. Again, I love the amount of detail that you get in these. You get these little figures that you can kind of pull out, and then you kind of reveal some more kind of detail in the background. Of course, you often get some kind of villain or bad guy, and then you get Max himself in all of the sets. There's little Max, and of course he goes on his adventures. And the great things with these, I never had them as a child. It was a little bit after, I suppose, when I was kind of picking up kind of children's toys, I guess. But I do have a good appreciation for these as I've grown up, and you can just see the amount of detail and creativity that's gone into these. I mean, it's even things like this. Look, you can see on the top of that there, which kind of looks like red slime oozing out, but then when you close it down, that forms the eye, this kind of dragon or lizard creature. You know, the spines or spikes of the dinosaur form this detail here on the bridge of the nose, and they're just fantastic. Really great play sets, and there's loads of them. And another one of the reasons why I decided to go in on this line is because I thought I could kind of hang them up on the wall. I need to find a way of doing that, but I thought that would take up a bit less shelf space, and as you know, I don't have a lot of shelf space, so I thought that might be a way of picking up some more kind of cool toys and displaying them without taking up the shelf space. So that's my plan with these. I want to pick up a few more first though. I'm not going to collect the whole line, but there are definitely some cool ones to look out for. So we've also got this one here. So on holiday in Devon recently, which is part of the UK, one of the comic shops there, this guy was on sale. It's a Super 7 kind of it's a modern toy really, but it's a version of the old what are they called, you know, the giant robots they did. So again, my brain's not working today, but the kind of Super Shogun Warriors, I think it was, you know, like yeah, Mazinger Z and some of these kind of Japanese robots that came over, and they also made this giant Godzilla, which was just fantastic and really sought after toy. So Super 7 have released kind of these kind of mini versions of it, and it still has the kind of the gimmick that you had on the original toy, which was the kind of tongue kind of coming out there. But because this is clear plastic, you can kind of see the workings, and this is kind of like their kind of, you know, burning Godzilla version rather than the green version. But I saw this on sale and thought, yeah, I need to pick that up. So he's been on my shelf. I attended the kind of big toy fair at Birmingham NEC, and met up with a few friends there, which is really, really good, because I speak to them a lot on Discord, with the kind of Transformers group. That's the Robot Recruits kind of membership group. And if you haven't heard me talk about Robot Recruits before, a really great shop. I'd encourage you to type it in, robotrecruits.co.uk, have a look, take advantage of their membership offer and join the Discord and meet loads of great people on there, loads of kind of collectors. And Exin Ferris is on there, who's also a YouTuber, and they very kindly gifted me this Rock Lord, which is really cool. And there's a little bit of damage in places there, which they were completely honest about. They said, you know, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, because I've got a few Rock Lords now, and this is just a really cool version. So these, if you don't know, they kind of fold up and turn into rocks. You know, that's the idea. So they kind of just fold in on themselves. You can see quite easy to transform, even one-handed. And yeah, they'll eventually turn into these little rocks. And I had one of these as a child, not this particular one, but I loved it, loved playing with it, particularly if you're playing outside with your toys as a child. To have some rocks that transform was just fantastic. So again, as I've grown up, I've looked at that line again and picked up a few of them. A really nice vintage line that not that many people talk about. I know Theo Kane from Slimehouse TV, he's a big fan of the Rock Lords, and I think he's pretty much got a full set. I think there's a few that he's missing, but he did a video on that a while ago, and that kind of reintroduced me back to them again. And so yeah, thanks to Theo and Slimehouse TV channel, because he does some great videos, and kind of toy spotlights, Toy Talk Tuesday and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't watched any of these, I would encourage you to do so, because you'll see some fantastic toys from the past. And actually another toy from the past in the back here is one of the Paralords. Again, the guy's name goes out of my head. I think it's Wayans. Yeah, his name's gone. But another good friend of mine who has his own channel called Brick Something. Again, I know I'm doing lots of kind of shout outs here, but that's the thing, isn't it? That's when you're part of the toy community. There are people that you get in touch with who inspire you, who introduce you to toy lines you haven't seen before, or remind you of things that you haven't seen for a long time, and share that kind of joy of collecting with you. And so, you know, it's nice to give a shout out to these people. And I know Brick Something has been a real encouragement to me and this channel in the past. And so it's great to kind of, yeah, just kind of share some appreciation for him, really, and what he does. He's overseas in America, and he's got a fantastic channel where he reviews toys. And at the moment, I know he's very into the AWOC toys, if you've heard of those, which are a fantastic toy company who are doing some outstanding figures at the moment on things like Kickstarter. But he mentioned these, and I think it was just one of the comments that he'd put on one of my videos, and I couldn't recall them, and so I thought I need to look those up. And sure enough, he was absolutely right. He said I'd love these, and I did. That kind of quirky, kind of weird monster alien kind of type of toy. This guy, he turned his head around. There you go, that's his kind of toy gimmick. But the guy who designs these, he was kind of like kind of science fiction illustrator, and so his illustrations were perfect for toys. And so there's this quite short-lived toy line. YouTube them, you'll find lots of information about them. But Paraloids, really cool toy line, quite unique really for the time. This is the only one I've got. I saw him in a little toy shop in Briary Hill, where I live, near to where I live, called Weird and Wonderful. Again, a shout out to them. They're also on Facebook, and it's a great little toy shop, really good prices, lots of little vintage finds in there. And in fact, one of the other things I picked up from Weird and Wonderful recently was this. He'd managed to buy a whole collection from somebody, which is, he was literally his Creature from the Black Lagoon collection. Lots of great stuff in there. Most of the ones that I wanted had already been sold, unfortunately. But I saw this one. This is not particularly old. It's Funko, if I remember right. And it's their kind of Japanese Sofubi kind of style figures. So it's not like their normal kind of Funko Pop figures, but more like the kind of Sofubi, Japanese Sofubi style. And I just really liked this. I thought it was a really cool paint effect. And I thought it's one of the few figures I actually don't mind keeping in the box, because he just looks really cool displayed like that. And it's a limited edition as well, which is always good. So I picked him up. So that was a nice little find, because I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's just such a classic monster. So what else have I picked up this year? So actually, speaking of Rock Lords, a moment ago, I managed to find this earlier in the year. This is Solitaire. This was a female character in the Rock Lords line. Quite a difficult and pricey figure to get hold of. So when I saw this for a decent price, I took the opportunity, and picked her up because she's really cool. And they were part of the Rock Lords, but they were gemstones, hence why you got the kind of clear plastic. So they kind of turn almost into kind of like a diamond or a gem. So Solitaire was a nice find, so I was pleased to add that to the collection. Then we come to this here. So after kind of, I suppose, pulling away from Transformers a little bit and getting into some other toy lines, one of the companies that kind of was drawn attention, or kind of grabbed my attention, is Mezco. I'm sure, yeah, Mezco, I've got it. Yeah, just checking out I've got that right, because there's so many toy companies out there. So Mezco do this kind of soft goods kind of toy. So you do get like kind of the plastic figures, but they're often wearing these kind of soft goods. And I've always quite liked the look of that. I know Mego Toys, they did a vintage line of these kind of superheroes, and they kind of look like they're in pajamas and stuff like that a little bit, but Mezco do a more modern take on that, and this is their take on Wolverine. And I have to say, when I saw the toy shots of this, when he's got some nice lighting on him, he looked amazing. It was a little bit disappointing in hand, and I don't even know why. He didn't quite have the effect that he had on me when I actually opened him up. And it's a fantastic set, not cheap by any means, because of the amount of accessories that you get with this. I mean, you've got this amazing base, and I love my dioramas, and essentially my channel is about making kind of some sort of base a little bit like this, not quite as detailed obviously, because it's aimed at beginners, but the idea of a base that you then stand your figure on. And it does. I mean, this absolutely illustrates the reasoning behind my channel. The fact that if you add a cool base with a figure, it just elevates that toy. And I think this base does exactly that. It really adds something to this Wolverine toy. As cool as he is by himself, it just makes it more of a statement piece when you're displaying it on your shelf. Comes with these kind of cool stands. You can get into these kind of cool poses. There's lots of different kind of versions of his claws. There's, I think, about 5 or 6 different heads in the set. It comes in this kind of special kind of tin box. Really cool. Just didn't quite amaze me as much as I thought it would when I actually opened him up. But I'm still glad to have him in the collection, because it's cool to own at least one of their figures. Let's move over here. So other figures that I really like are die-cast figures. So when I was at the Toy Fair in Birmingham, and I mentioned earlier, I found this version of Devilman. So anybody who knows me and knows this channel knows I'm a big fan of Go and the Guy, who created Starfleet, the old marionette show, who created this guy here, Devilman, who created Mazinger Z, and so many other cool characters. And of course Steel Jeeg, who's one of my favourite kind of super robot toy designs. We've done a number of videos on my channel about him. So this was one of his original characters as well, and it's all just solid die-cast metal. There's very little plastic in this. It's so heavy, and it's got really cool articulation as well. So I had to pick him up because he's just really cool. There's just something about toys that are kind of weighty that just makes them feel just like a really premium toy. And so he's kind of in this kind of a Chogokin style. So Bandai do a series called Soul of Chogokin, and it's all like the classic Japanese robots, but again with the kind of modern articulation, and that's based on their vintage Chogokin toy line. So Poppy made these vintage die-cast toys, and so it's kind of an up-to-date version. So I've always wanted a Soul of Chogokin, but again they're so expensive, but I saw a good price on this one here. This is Getter Robo, which is another Go and the Guy design. I don't think it's I can't remember if the guy designed it and somebody else wrote it or created it. I know it's not completely a Go Nagai character. I think it's a collaboration with another anime creator. But again, this is all die cast, or most of it anyway, as they all drop down. Really, really heavy, really solid. There's obviously some plastic parts as well, like the head sculpting is plastic. But great articulation. Yeah, really cool toys, and I thought I need to have at least one of these guys in my collection. So it kind of ticks that box. Now, I don't feel I need to buy the whole line, because one, I can't afford it, and two, I haven't got the space for it. But at least now I've got one of their figures. I'm just going to put that one down on the floor. So then, yeah, I suppose let's go right up to date. So the most recent toys I've picked up are these kind of alternative kind of Lego sets. So these aren't made by Lego. They're made by a company called Fantasy Toys, or Fantasy Bricks, I think is their name. So this is I think they're based in China. It is actually an official toy. So the creators of Astro Boy, it is a licensed toy. But of course it's not proper Lego, but it's using that kind of brick system. And I picked this up because I think this cost me, it's about £55, which I thought was a really good price, because if you buy something this scale from Lego, you're talking hundreds of pounds. And so I love Astro Boy. I've got a couple of Astro Boy kind of pieces, and so I saw a review from Toy Polloi on this. Actually, is another really great YouTuber I'm sure you've heard of. If you haven't, again, he restores vintage toys. That's pretty much what his channel's about. But he was sent this set from Fantasy Bricks, and he did a review of it, and I just thought it was amazing. So I picked it up, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed just making this set. I haven't played with Lego for years. I remember picking up a few of the Lego Friends kits when my daughters were little, and I'd pretty much have to build them myself. They wasn't that interested in the building of them. They like playing with the figures afterwards, but they weren't that interested. So it was nice to just, again, spend hours actually building this, and the results are fantastic. And again, great little features, fully articulated. You can kind of open up his kind of chamber. The figures, they're not minifigures like you find with Lego, which is quite nice. It's something a bit different. Obviously they're quite small figures, about probably 4 inches, but really cool set. And if you like Lego and you're not too kind of offended by the idea of using a different brick company, then I would definitely encourage you to pick up this set, because it's amazing. And of course, after I built that, I had the kind of the itch then to buy another Lego set, and I saw this, which again, it's not Lego, but it is Mattel. So Mattel, who make the He-Man line, it's one of their companies, and again, names go right out of my head today. Mega Bloks, I think it is. I'm sure it's Mega Bloks. So they do a Masters of the Universe toy line. This is their Castle Grayskull. Picked it up for a really good price. In fact, I've seen lots of posts on Facebook recently saying where you can get this for really cheap. In fact, I think the latest one was, if you're in the UK, you can get this for about £55 from Game. You know, the who do the kind of the consoles and the computer games, but they do a lot of board games there as well, and toys. often at a much cheaper price. So I know you can pick up Transformers there for quite cheap. I haven't managed to get a good Transformers buy from Game yet, but I know lots of people who have. But they've got this at the moment for really cheap. I got it, I think, from a place called Makio, MAQIO, something like that. And I was really pleased. Yeah, really good price. And a fantastic set. I mean, it takes hours to build this, but the amazing thing is, if I can just move a few bits around, just to make a little bit of space. So you've got lots of cool features. It comes with loads of the minifigures. And you can open it up. See if I can do that without breaking anything. And so it's not just a model of Castle Grayskull, it is a playset. And it's got all of the original features. I think it's got a mixture of the original vintage Castle Grayskull and the updated version in the Classics line. And as you know, most of the Classics line was designed by the Four Horsemen, which is another company that I've been wanting to get something of theirs for such a long time now. But again, the Classics line are very expensive to pick up. I'd love to get a Skeletor from the Classics line, but they're very expensive. So I've always had to put that on hold. So it's nice to get a bit of a homage to the Classics and the vintage. And then I thought I need a Classics figure. And one of the ones that I've looked at for a long time now is this one, which is part, I think, of the Pre-Eternia line. And this was based on some original concept artwork, which is in the Masters of the Universe art book. And this was one of the designs for what Skeletor was going to look like. But eventually they turned him into his own character. And I think he's meant to be some kind of like demon that kind of, I think, possesses kind of Skeletor and, you know, becomes the Skeletor that we actually know today. Again, there's YouTube videos that go into the kind of the folklore and the story behind this guy. But I love just how different this thing is, you know. I know lots of people kind of were moaning about the colour, but I love the fluorescent green colour. He's almost this kind of weird skull troll kind of creature, and I just think he's ace. So, and he looks great next to Castle Grayskull. I know he's obviously not in scale, but that doesn't bother me. I've never been too bothered about scale. So that was another quite recent pickup actually in the last month. And I think actually one of my favourite pickups, again going back to Mezco toys, is this version of Hellboy. Let me just again move some figures out the way. So this is one of their earlier toys. He's meant to have actually his kind of overcoat, you know, his trench coat. This one didn't come with his trench coat, but I thought I could easily either make that or buy a trench coat for somebody else and kind of customize it. And he was going for a good price. And I love the Mignola Hellboy, the way he just looks in the comics, and I think they've just captured that just brilliantly. Don't know if I can just focus in there on the detail. Again, he's got decent articulation, lots of cool accessories. And he's just such a fantastic toy. He just looks great on display. I mean, he looks like a sculpture, but he's an action figure. And so I was really, really pleased with him. So he's one of my favourite pickups of the year, even though he's quite an old toy now. So that is pretty much it. So, again, nice to be able to upload a new video after it's been a while. Hopefully you've enjoyed looking back on what I've picked up over the past 6 months. And I hope to see you all again soon. And again, remember, if you're struggling, talk to somebody.